My name is Paul Olson, and I'll tell you a little about how it was when I went to Korea in 1953, I think in February or something like that. I went there together with my wife, Astrid, and she was a nurse. I was internal medicine, but later on there I was head of the X-ray department. Can I show you?
Sure.
Here, you want me to show it for you, or this is the entrance of the hospital. It's called Swedish Red Cross Hospital, and actually it was Swedish Red Cross organizing this, and I'll show you later on. Here is some of the buildings in the. This is Folke Bernadotte building, and we had another building there, Prince Carl building. They are both royal persons. The Folke Bernadotte, he was. They were both chosen the names because they were heads in the Swedish Red Cross Hospital.
Why did you? How did you learn about the Korean War? You volunteered, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, I knew very little about I didn't know anything about Korea before the war started. And I read in the paper and so on, and I think in our Swedish paper was asking people to help, and I don't know exactly why. I thought this may be something for us, for my wife and me, but I had been working before, right after the war in Belgium, picking stones. I've been working in Germany, helping in an X-ray department. I've been working in Finland, the Second War in Finland, so I had some interest in going out and seeing the world and work.
And your wife? She said yes too?
Yeah. Well, she had never been abroad nearly, and when we went there, took farewell from relatives and so on, that was the very first time she entered an aeroplane. And at that time we went slowly down Europe and stayed for quite a long time in Cairo. And that's the very first time that we got a little feeling of Far East. And it was something very, very new.
What did you both think about Korea when you first landed? You and your wife both.
We knew very little about Korea.
Mm.
We knew there had been a hard war, the front line going forth and back, but very little we knew. So, and when we came first to Japan, I remember, oh, this is a poor country. And later on, coming to Korea, oh, still more poor. So we thought, how should it be to live here? But we were very well taken care of there at the hospital.
What do you remember from the hospital? Do you remember?
The first day, well, I remember we were invited for dinner the first day we came there, and the head of the hospital, he said, now we are waiting for the hostile soldiers and airplane trying to make something. There was talking about getting peace negotiations, and of course everybody wants the best position before that. So, and for the first time, I think, nearly in our lives, we were given some hard drink. So for the dinner, so we were a little up and down, and that's right after the long trip. So we were a little, I don't know. Now, but we were very well taken care of.
At the hospital, did you meet a lot of soldiers from different countries?
Yeah, they came from many countries, and the kind of patients that came to this hospital, that should be those who could go back to the front line within a few weeks, or those who should stay for a few days, a few weeks before going to Japan, where they need long-time care. And,
what kind of hospital MASH units were in Japan? Americans?
In Japan,
Uh-huh.
well, sure, there was American hospital. The other Nordic countries, they had more like MASH, Norwegian, MASH-like hospital in tents. I was up there for a few days visiting them, and Denmark, they had a hospital ship.
Jutlandia.
Yeah, Jutlandia, and they were able to take patients directly from the front on a plane and could land right on the ship. So they were very effective, and I think they were kind of specialized in head injuries, needed rapid care.
Urgent care. Wow. So Swedish treated kind of minor injuries, not critical, deadly, fatal injuries. No operation.
In
Swedish hospital.
Swedish hospital. Oh, sure, they had lots of operations, but no very big operation. But I never served in in the surgical department, but I know my wife was for part of the time working there, and she told me they had patients coming from very many countries, and they had sometimes wait nighttime and telling terrible histories about what they had how they were injured, and how Chinese people coming in hundreds there in the night and so on.
Did you ever, I mean, what do you remember about Koreans? Did you see Koreans there?
About the Korean?
Mm-hmm. Korean children, Korean people, did you see?
Well, we were there before the armistice, and then there were rather many injured before, but after the armistice, July 27, 1953, we've taken more and more Koreans, patients, civil Koreans, and I know as I was working in the X-ray department, I saw many patients with terrible tuberculosis in the lungs, with holes in the lungs, and we were discussing how should we treat. We had few drugs possible, and sometimes they got the treatment, but if there were to be holes, well, we sent them further on. We couldn't treat them there. And lots of civil Koreans, they were coming there to the hospital, lying in the street. You can see. Lots of people waiting to come inside the gate, and they were here. They are giving them DDT spray.
A lot of children.
Yeah.
Well, did you ever go back to Korea?
Yes, I've been back there twice.
Wow, twice.
Yes. When at the time I was invited to Korea together with a few other friends there privately. But then we stayed only in Seoul, but that's 15 years ago. Not then, now, a few months ago in November, we were invited by the Veteran Administration in Korea to visit there for 1 week, and we were very well taken care of. We were many people coming from many countries. We were 3 buses loaded with people, and one thing I think was a little curious, that we always had an ambulance following us.
Mm-hmm.
And several nurses too. Well, of course, people, many of us were very old, so it was maybe necessary. I don't know if anybody had to use the ambulance, but it was always few meters here or there from where we were.
That must have been very interesting for you because you're the ones that treated Koreans during the war and after, and now they were looking after you.
Now,
They were looking after you.
yes, really.
Yes. So that must have been very emotional. Yes. And were you surprised to see Korea, the modern Korea?
Yes, of course. I was surprised. It was quite new Korea. And, as I understand, Seoul was twice the size, maybe more, than when we were there before. And was most modern city you could think about. And maybe the change was still more in Busan. I mean, that was a small city when we were there. Now there were most modern, lots of sky buildings, and so hardly I couldn't remember. It was nothing what I saw there before. It was something quite new. But the mountains I could see far away, happy to say they were the same.
Yes, Korea has many mountains. I heard that during the Korean War, it was very cold. Everybody talks about how cold it was during the Korean War.
But we were there mostly, we were there springtime, summer, and autumn, so we had a very good weather when we were there. And
you were very fortunate.
In our free time, we were longing for the Korean the shores, where you could take in baths and swim and so on. Very nice places.
So looking back, what do you think? What do you think about the Swedish contribution in the war? So you have your personal, you and your wife's personal experience in Korea, but in a larger context, what do you think about the Swedish contribution?
Well, I think it has been of very good importance for the long time. I mean, of course, it was important that we could help them with taking care of the patients. We had about 150 to 200 beds in each of two buildings. So I don't know, but there are maybe several thousands of patients being taken care of. But I think it's more important what has happened in the long run, that the contacts between South Korea and Sweden have been of very good importance for the development of Korea and development here in Sweden. It's helped us, as I understand, with the context for Korea and maybe also for Japan.
I saw that where the Swedish hospital was is turned into a national hospital for Korea. Have you visited there?
No, I haven't visited that, but I know about that.
And there's a monument for Swedish.
Yes, yes, I didn't see it, but I heard about it. But the Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, they decided that they wanted to start a university hospital in Seoul, and the latter time in a Swedish hospital there in Busan, they worked, I think, for a short time together with the Danes and Norwegians, and one of my best friends were working in that hospital that moved down to Seoul. That's my friend was, yeah, we know talking about together, yeah. Janne Kinman.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
He worked there several years.
Your best friend from in the Korean War, from the Korean War.
My friends from medical studies, he was working several years in
Korea.
this hospital in Seoul.
To help build it,
Yes,
to help train,
trained.
to train.
Yeah.
I saw in the documentary that the nurses, and even after the war, they were trained by the Swedish doctors
yeah.
and nurses. Yeah, that's remarkable.
I think that was very important for the future education of nurses and doctors there in Seoul.
What do you think about? So one thing that breaks my heart a little bit is that the Korean War never ended. As you know, the Swedish still are at the Panmunjom, the DMZ
Yeah,
along the
yeah.
border, to guard,
Yeah,
to protect the border.
yeah. I was up there.
Oh, you were.
Yeah, and I was visiting the Norwegian hospital, Normesh, up near the front, and there was like mesh. All the hospitals were just in tents.
Did you watch the American TV show MASH?
Yes, sure.
Oh, you
sure.
did?
Yeah, yeah, and this Norwegian hospital, it was quite like MASH.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, okay. So it was.
Well, seeing it, all the tents and what happened there, but I think they had more fun in the American MASH, in the movies.
Well, I mean, I hope that I think the greatest honor is for the veterans is when the war ends
Yeah,
and there is peace, then I truly hope that in your lifetime you will see a unified Korea, because, in this picture here we have a very malnourished baby, and I look at a toddler, and I look at him, and he reminds me of babies or toddlers in North Korea. But as you know, South Koreans are now prosperous, and we are very grateful to the sacrifices of you and your comrades and the veterans all over the world, whom I call my grandpas and grandmas. So I hope that, number one, we will never forget, but two, that there's really peace, so that you know that you not only defended freedom for South Korea, but all of the Korean Peninsula.
We really hope.
Right, to see that. And maybe next time you could even go to North Korea, right?
Maybe.
Yeah. Hope there's peace. Well, thank you so much.